Hey everybody, Professor Benelo here with the second of two short videos discussing Unit 4 discussion board. The first topic I want to go over in this short video is Reaganomics. This is basically Reagan's economic policy. When Reagan took the oath of office in January 1981, he was very concerned about economic growth. And he wanted to increase the amount of spending money that everybody had in their pockets, every American had in his or her pocket. So in an attempt to increase this, he instituted what was dubbed as Reaganomics. The press called it Reaganomics, and that stuck. Reagan basically believed in placing tax cuts. And basically, he felt that the wealth would trickle down. If you cut the taxes for big business and the wealthy, the wealth would trickle down to the lower and middle classes. Okay. Reagan was a big fan of smaller government and felt that the middle class would benefit from simplified tax codes. He cut about $41 billion, which is a lot of money from the federal budget, and a lot of that was money that was going towards social programs. Supply side economics is part of Reaganomics, the belief that cutting the taxes of big business will cause the wealth to trickle down and benefit the middle and lower classes. Okay, so you really want to pay attention to the Tax Equity and Responsibility Act because remember the primary document is an interview with Reagan regarding Reaganomics and particularly the Tax Equity and Responsibility Act of 1982. This law closed tax loopholes and restricted benefits in pension plans. This was Reagan's way of dealing with the national debt without raising taxes. He did not want to raise taxes. Taxes are a naughty word for conservative Republicans. The Tax Equity and Responsibility Act helped out somewhat, but really didn't help out as much as needed, just as little. It didn't do enough to aid the economy. The gap between the rich and the poor continued to grow during Reagan's 8 years in office. He did not increase the minimum wage while he was president, and he cut federal funding for firefighters, policemen, and education. Single mother and African American households saw the biggest decline in income. And in 1984, Reagan further slashed the tax rates of the wealthy, and this caused an even larger federal deficit. The country's debt would really balloon during his second term in office when he was focused on financing the military, giving more money to the military, and particularly he was very into financing the Star Wars or Strategic Defense Initiative program. Okay, the second topic I want to go over is the First Gulf War. The First Gulf War has its origins on August 2nd, 1990, when Iraqi forces invaded and took over Kuwait. Kuwait is a very oil-rich nation. President Bush, who was president at the time, immediately called for the withdrawal of Iraqi forces. Remember, it's very important to remember that during the First Gulf War, the United States was the leader of United Nations coalition forces. And we based ourselves, United Nations coalition forces based themselves in Saudi Arabia. And the Saudis were perfectly fine with having their country be the base for these forces because their theory was, well, what the heck? If Saddam Hussein is invading and taking over Kuwait, which is an oil-rich nation, we are also an oil-rich nation, we're probably going to be next. Since the U.S. had previously been an ally of Iraq, Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein felt that it would be fine to take over Kuwait, and the U.S. would not intervene. Basically, he very much underestimated us. Coalition forces quickly liberated Kuwait and headed into Iraq. Even though the coalition forces had won the war, Saddam Hussein remained in power. He remained in power for another 12 years. President George H.W. Bush spoke before the United Nations General Assembly on October 1st, 1990, regarding Iraqi aggression. The speech occurred about 2 months after the Iraqi invasion and takeover of Kuwait. In the speech, he condemns the Iraqi aggression and calls on members of the United Nations to demand a return to Kuwait to the Kuwaitis, actually. He states that the United Nations can aid nations to band together to prevent this aggression and punish those responsible. So that was basically the United Nations function, was to punish aggressors. Rise of conservatism is the third topic that you can go over for this project. Pat Buchanan, conservative commentator, he had run for the Republican nomination, but lost out to President George H.W. Bush, who was running for re-election. August 17, 1992, Buchanan was chosen to give a speech in front of the Republican National Convention in support of President Bush's re-election campaign. In this speech, it's a very famous speech in which he talks about a culture war. So if you're going over this topic, this is the rise of conservatism, define what he meant by a culture war. What topics of debate was he bringing about? And what was his opinion on these topics of debate? He finishes out the speech by stating how George H.W. Bush is the right man to lead the nation through its current difficulties. Okay, the last topic that you can go over in Unit 4 discussion board is Ronald Reagan's tear down the speech from June of 1987. He gave the speech in front of the Berlin Wall. During the speech, he urged an end to the Cold War, and he expressed the dream of having democracy spread to those nations currently under communist rule. And he emphasized the hardships that endured by Berliners since the wall had been built in 1961. Remember, the Berlin Wall had been built to prevent East Germans from escaping communist East Germany for democratic West Germany. The dismantling of the wall began November 1989 when the East German government officially collapsed. Why did the East German government collapse? You might want to delve into that. The economy in East Germany had been on the decline. Soviet Premier Gorbachev urged the East Germans to impose economic reforms like he did in the Soviet Union, but they really didn't. Many East Germans flocked to embassies requesting to be let into West Germany. In November 1989, East German leader Erich Honecker resigned and East Germans were let into West Germany. So that is the last topic, the end of the Cold War. Please do not hesitate to contact me with absolutely any questions. I am here for you. So I hope these 2 videos have helped. Look into these topics and be working on this diligently. Find the topic you find most interesting and dive into it. All right, everybody, have a good one and good luck.